Yes, that's it.
Alrighty. I'm about to start letting people in, Joe.
Okay. Good to go.
It's in this document, it says I'm supposed to share to GGCNJ's.
Don't worry about that.
We'll share it later, right?
Yeah, we'll worry about it later.
Alrighty, sounds good. Perfect. Hello, good evening, everyone.
Hello.
Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. We know everyone is very busy and everyone has a lot of work outside of, civic engagement. I really do appreciate you all for coming tonight. My name is Madina P. Ouedraogo. I am the Government Affairs Manager here at the New Jersey Chapter Council on American Islamic Relations, where I handle their advocacy, legislative, and public policy portfolios. And I had the pleasure of, working with a bunch of different organizations to put this program on tonight, which is titled Making Our Voices Heard, the Better Ballots New Jersey campaign. And this Zoom information session will provide more about the movement to fix New Jersey's undemocratic primary ballot system. The county line ballot has enabled a political system that shuts out historically marginalized groups such as people of color and women. It silences these groups and working people in general, preventing their voices from truly impacting their government and political system. Thus, fixing the ballot system would restore their voices and their freedom to fully participate in democracy. And the info session will expand on what the line is, why it matters, how New Jersey voters can collectively work to change it, and what the processes look like, in addition to other critical information about civic engagement and involvement here within the state of New Jersey. So again, thank you so much for being here. And I also want to pass it over to Joe Marchia to formally introduce himself.
Hi, everybody, and thank you, Madina. Really thrilled to be on here with you all. My name is Joe Marchia. I am an organizer with Our Revolution New Jersey as part of the Our Revolution New Jersey State Organizing Committee. I also have a role with Our Revolution Trenton Mercer, which is the Mercer County chapter, and I'm a Better Ballots ambassador for the Good Government Coalition New Jersey. And those are the two groups that are, happy to co-host this event with CAIR New Jersey and with Madina. Just a little bit of info about us briefly. I want to note that the other organizations that are co-hosting this, those being CAIR New Jersey and the Good Government Coalition of New Jersey, are 501c3 nonprofits, and they are nonpartisan, not electoral, political in that sense. Whereas Our Revolution New Jersey, our nationwide network, is a 501c4. So I want to make it clear that we do partisan politics, we do electoral politics. We tend to be on the left side of the political spectrum. So just the full disclosure, that's kind of the place we're coming from. But the issues we're going to discuss and the work we're doing on the Better Ballots New Jersey campaign is relevant to everyone across the entirety of the political spectrum in New Jersey, any party you're in, any group you ascribe to, because it takes away the voices from anyone who is not a political insider. And we'll get more into that in a little bit. So yeah, I just wanted to make sure we cover that. And if you're interested in some of the issues that Our Revolution New Jersey works on outside of this, feel free to hit me up separately. But we are very focused on the Better Ballots New Jersey campaign for all the reasons I just mentioned. Now I want to throw it back to Madina to introduce our first speaker.
Thank you so much, Joe. And yes, thank you for that. Yes, I do want to reiterate that CAIR New Jersey is a nonpartisan 501c3 organization. We do not make any claims to endorse any political party or any political candidate. We're here simply to give the community information so they can make well-informed decisions that represent whatever their interests are. So thank you for that. I want to take this time to thank our amazing co-sponsors for being a part of this very necessary conversation, which includes Our Revolution New Jersey, the Good Government Coalition of New Jersey, the Better Ballots, New Jersey Campaign, American Muslims for Palestine, the Muslim League of Voters of New Jersey, the New Jersey Alliance for Immigrant Justice, as well as the New Jersey Black Empowerment Coalition. So we'd like to thank our coalition partners for being here and helping to amplify this. In addition, now I want to take the opportunity to introduce our first guest speaker, who will be giving a presentation on New Jersey's broken democracy. What is the county line and how does it undermine democracy? Dr. Julia Sass-Rubin, who is the Associate Dean of Academic Programs, the Director of the Public Policy Program, and Associate Professor at Rutgers State University of New Jersey. So thank you so much, and I'll give it over to you, Professor, to have the opportunity to formally introduce yourself and also present your amazing research.
Thank you so much. Let me just go into display mode. Okay, so I'd like to take about 20 minutes and share my research about the county line and its impact on the politics and policy of our state. So it's important to begin by understanding that most of our counties and our legislative districts in New Jersey are dominated by one of the two major political parties. And so what that means is that the general election is a foregone conclusion. And really, it's winning the primary that is important. If you win a primary in most of the state, that guarantees that you'll win the general election because one party is so dominant. So primary elections are very important. And that's why we're focusing on primary election ballots. Our ballots in New Jersey are unique. I looked at every other state in the country and no other state has a primary ballot like ours. In most states and the District of Columbia, primary ballots look like this, where you have the position clearly stated that people are running for and all the people who are running for that position listed below that in some order. There's different ways of structuring that. But it's obvious to the voter who their choice set is and what position they're voting for. In a few states, you have ballots that look more like this, where you have positions on the left and the candidates the right of that. But very few states, actually, it's primarily Delaware and parts of Pennsylvania. In contrast, in 19 of our 21 counties, our primary ballots are organized around what is known as the county line, which is all the candidates that have been endorsed by their local county party, either the Democrats or the Republicans. And those candidates, the reason it's called a line is they're shown in a vertical or a horizontal line. Let me give you some examples. This is a 2021 Essex County Republican primary ballot. The county line is in row E. This is a 2018 Democratic primary ballot from Camden, and the county line is in column 2. About 5 counties have horizontal ballots, the rest have vertical lines. The county line provides candidates that are endorsed by the party with many advantages. First of all, they generally have the best ballot position. You can see in the 2 ballots that I've shared that they're in the first row or the second column, so they're easy for the voter to identify. Second of all, the best known candidates that election cycle are at the top of the line. So in 2018, it was Senator Menendez. Of course, in 2020, it was then Vice President Biden and President Trump. And so voters know that individual, and that tends to lend legitimacy to everybody else who is beneath them on the ballot or to the right of them on the ballot. The candidates who are not on the county line are by design in a separate column or row. And sometimes there are 1 to 6 or more blank columns or rows between them and the endorsed candidates. You can see that here. There's blank spaces all over this ballot. And of course, the Camden ballot is the classic one where you have the county line in column 2, and then you have 6 blank columns between Donald Norcross, who is running for Congress on the county line, and the 2 people who are running in the Democratic primary against him, who are not only all the way over to the right in what is now known as ballot Siberia, but actually stacked one on top of each other, even though they're running against each other. And so if a voter notices them, they might be inclined to vote for both of them and disqualify their ballot. This design, this county line structure, violates many rules of good ballot design. The one I want to focus on, however, is that it creates murky contest boundaries, which basically means that voters can't tell which candidates they can vote for each office, who's running for what position. So a clear ballot, clear contest boundaries would look something like this in a machine ballot. This is actually a general election ballot, but it doesn't matter. The structure is the same. If you're voting in a machine, the recommendation is that you only show one election at a time, one set of choices. So in this case, it's for lieutenant governor, and you see all the people who are running beneath that. And then the voter moves on to the next set on the next screen, so they don't get overwhelmed visually. In a paper ballot, clear contest boundaries would be like that Nevada ballot that I showed you at the start, where there are these cubes, office blocks, and you can tell who's running for what office. By contrast, New Jersey ballots have very murky boundaries. So this is a 2017 Middlesex Democratic primary ballot. Can you tell who your choices are as a voter in the election for governor? So here's the governor at the very top. Who are your choices? Well, it turns out there's 5 in the first row and a 6th one in the second row in column D, for reasons that make no sense to a voter and would lead to confusion in knowing who they can choose from. Here's a 2020 Democratic primary ballot from Union County. Can you tell who your choices are for the House of Representatives? Here's the House of Representatives position. Who are your choices? Well, it turns out there's 3, 1 on the county line in column B, and then 2 all the way over on the right with blank spaces between them and the endorsed candidate. How about this 2020 Mercer County ballot? Can you tell who the candidates are for the House of Representatives? Here's the House of Representatives position. Well, it turns out there's 3 again. 2 are in column A, which is the county line, and 1 is in column B. Very confusing to voters, so confusing to voters because they're used to having only the number of candidates in the column of the county line that they can actually vote for. So this was such a confusing ballot that led to a lot of overvotes. And the county line also leads to a lot of undervotes. So in this case, the overvotes were because people just went straight down column A and they voted for everybody like they are trained to do in New Jersey as primary voters. And as a result, voted for 2 people for Congress instead of 1. And a third of those ballots had selected both of the people on the line, even though only one of them could be voted for. The ballot said in small print, vote for 1, but people are just, they just go straight down and they vote for everybody. So that third of all ballots in that race were tossed because they overvoted. Another example of how murky our contest boundaries are is also from 2020. In Atlantic County, I found that the number of Democratic votes cast for the U.S. Senate was only 81% of the number cast for president, and only 82% of the number cast for the House of Representatives. And this is really unusual because normally the number of people who vote for a position decreases as you go down the ballot. So the most number vote for president and the least number vote for local positions. And this was true in every other county in 2020. So what happened in Atlantic County? Well, what happened was Cory Booker, who had the endorsement for the Senate position, he was obviously an incumbent, he was running for re-election. He chose not to be on the county line. He came over here and bracketed with his friend Bridget Harrison, who was running for the House of Representatives. And so about 20% of Atlantic County Democrats, again, were so trained to just vote the line that when they realized there was nobody in the Senate race, rather than moving a column over and voting for Cory Booker there, they just went straight down and didn't vote for anybody. Maybe they didn't even realize they could. So this is what happens when you condition voters vote the county line, and when you have such a confusing ballot with murky boundaries, you get overvotes, undervotes, and you also steer voters very strongly wherever the party wants them to go. And parties really encourage people to vote the line. You might have gotten something like this in the mail. This is from the Mercer County Democratic Party, but every party and every county does something like this, where they send this out before the election and they say, vote column A or vote row 2, whatever the specifics are, where the Democrats are, or where the Republicans are. But of course, in the primary, it's only Democrats or only Republicans. What they're trying to do is condition their voters to just vote the line. Not surprisingly, being on the line provides a lot of advantages to those candidates. So one way we can think about this is historically, in the last 12 years, 6 election cycles, no state legislative incumbent in New Jersey who had the county line has lost a primary. And you might think, well, incumbents generally win. And that's true, but this is substantially out of alignment with the rest of the country. In fact, in that 12-year period, almost 1,200 incumbents the state legislature lost nationally. So you can see how wildly out of alignment New Jersey is. It also protects incumbents at the congressional level. I looked at the last 50 years and I found that no congressional incumbent on the county line had lost a primary in those 50 years, as long as they had the county line or the county line in the larger county in their district. By comparison, just in 2020 and 2022, we had 24 congressional incumbents defeated nationally, just in those 2 cycles. I also looked at the 2020 primaries to try to quantify what the actual benefit that the county line provided was, if we could put a percentage on it. And what I found is I looked at 4 races where different people were endorsed in different counties in a district, in a congressional district, or in a statewide Senate race. And there were only 4 contests like that where you had split endorsements. And those 4 contests in 2020, the difference was 35 percentage points between being on the county line in one county and having your opponent on the county line in a different county. Let me show you what I mean. So the example is from the 3rd Congressional District Republican primary. And I use this one because it's a very simple race. Again, there were 4 such contests. There were 2 candidates and 2 counties. Kay Gibbs was on the county line in Burlington. David Richter was on the county line in Ocean. They each were endorsed by those county Republican parties. They each won the county where they were on the county line. Kay Gibbs, being on the county line in Burlington versus having David Richter on the county line in Ocean, was a difference of 34 percentage points. And conversely, for Richter, being on the county line versus having Kay Gibbs on the county line was a difference of 35 percentage points. And I found, again, there were 4 such races. The difference ranged from 25 to 50 in the Republican Senate primary. So it's a huge, huge impact of being on the line. What does this mean for New Jersey's politics and policy? Well, first of all, what it means on a very functional level is that 38 people in our state get to decide who wins most of our elections, because essentially the voters don't matter. It's the 19 Republican and 19 Democratic county party chairs. 2 counties don't have county lines that make these decisions, and they decide who's going to win almost all the contests in our state. Candidates who are not selected by those 38 individuals tend to drop out. So we have very few choices as voters in the primary, which discourages people from voting at all, because what's the point? I wanted to share with you my ballot. This is the ballot that I voted on this week in Princeton, New Jersey, in Mercer County. As you can see, neither the Democratic nor the Republican part of the ballot had a single contested race. And if you think this is unusual, out of 240 state legislative positions on the ballot this cycle, only 21 are contested. We have 28 incumbents who retired or are running against each other this cycle. So 28 positions where there's no incumbent running for the New Jersey State Legislature. And only 21 out of 240 positions have any competition at all. That's one of the outcomes of our primary ballots. By comparison, here's what a normal ballot looks like. This is from Pittsburgh in 2021. You had 4 candidates for mayor, 39 judicial candidates for 9 positions, and 2 candidates for sheriff. This is an office block ballot where it's very easy to see who's running for which positions. Compare that to our ballot. Another impact is that the elected officials understand how this system works, and they understand who they actually owe political allegiance to, who decides their future. It's the party insiders, it's not the voters. And so we have a system that lacks transparency. We have a lot of patronage and inside deals and corruption. It also prohibits needed reform, because legislators, once they're elected, again, they're beholden to the party power brokers, not to the voters. So we have bills that are very popular, that are good legislative priorities, and that they don't move. So in 2021, for example, we had all sorts of reform around access to law enforcement disciplinary records and accountability for police that did not move, even though they had support in the population. We have same-day voter registration, which has not moved, even though it has a lot of support in the population. And an extension of that is that we have bad policies that do move. For example, I'm guessing all of you are very familiar with this recently enacted legislation ironically called the Election Transparency Act, which essentially gutted our prohibitions on pay to play, undercut ELEC, which monitors election transparency and spending. And this sailed through the legislature despite a lot of opposition from good government groups and from voters, again, because the legislature is really only accountable to itself. Finally, this really impacts the election of women and people of color. So we have had only one woman governor in the entire history of women being able to vote or run for office. We've only had 7 women represent New Jersey in Congress, and 2 of them are serving right now and were elected in the last 6 years, roughly. We've never had a female senator, and keep in mind, 34 states have had a female senator, including very conservative states where maybe you wouldn't expect that. 7 states have had both senators be women at the same time. And our legislature is not exactly leading in terms of the number of women who are serving. This data is slightly outdated, and we have a bunch of seats this time around that are probably going to result in fewer women being in the state legislature. In comparison, you have states like Nevada, where the majority of legislature is actually female. And this is true not just for women, it's true for people of color as well. So if you look at the percentage of people of color in the state legislature versus New Jersey as a state, the legislature is overwhelmingly non-Hispanic white. The state is only about half non-Hispanic white. Legislature is actually fairly well represented when it comes to Black New Jersey residents, but it's substantially underrepresented in terms of Hispanics and Asians. And the explanation for this has a lot to do with the county line, because the people who decide who will get endorsed, who will be on the line, are the Democratic and Republican county party chairs, those 38 individuals I mentioned earlier. And as you can see, their demographics are even less representative of the state as a whole than the demographics of the legislature. They are overwhelmingly male, non-Hispanic white. And so Black, Hispanic, and Asian New Jersey residents are not reflected in the county party chairs. And that means that their networks that they pick from when they endorse individuals to run tend to look like them and not like the state as a whole. So what's the goal? Goal is go from this kind of a ballot, which is a confusing ballot with a lot of murky boundaries. It's hard for voters to understand. This is actually a 2016 Mercer County Democratic primary ballot, to this kind of a ballot. This is exactly the same set of contests. It's actually also a Mercer 2016 primary ballot, but the ballot on the right was the paper ballot in that cycle. The ballot on the left was the machine ballot that cycle. And you can see how much easier it is for a voter to understand their choices when they look at the ballot on the right. So that's the goal, to go from the left to what's on the right. Unfortunately, Mercer County adopted the county line ballot for their paper ballots as well shortly after the 2016 election. So if you were thinking, aha, we can just use paper ballots, they have pretty much all been brought in line with the machine ballots. And so with the exception of Hunterdon, which has a clearer paper ballot than their machine ballot, and the 2 counties, Salem and Sussex, which don't have a county line, every other county has this mess that you see here on the left side. And with that, let me stop and see if you have any questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Julia. I just want to note, if anybody has questions, now's a good time to raise your hand, put your questions in chat. As we're going through Julia and our next couple of speakers after that, I'm going to ask that everybody please mute yourself if you're not speaking and asking a question, and B, please feel free to put questions into chat as the presentation is happening, or to mark down that you'd like to ask a question once that's done. Anyway, does anybody have any questions for Dr. Rubin?
I do.
Go ahead, Saram.
Yeah. So I've been hearing a lot about the ballot line, and most of the stuff is accurate. I also learned about this on my own. What do you think?
I do have a question.
To beat the ballot line? Because I've seen by history, particularly Jim Florio, both columns ran full slates. Do you think that might be one of the best options to model it on? Because it's happening right now in my district for the primary.
Are you in the 3rd or 4th by any chance?
I'm 3rd.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was just looking at the 3rd because it's really interesting how in Gloucester, the non county endorsed Republican slate managed to get column A and they're running people all the way down. I think that that will certainly impact their ability to draw voters. So visually, if you can run a full slate of candidates and if you have a tagline that looks like the official tagline, so in Gloucester, it's very similar, the tagline that the opposition is using relative to the endorsed slate, that will
Mine's
absolutely.
the Good Democrats for column B.
I was thinking of the Republicans specifically, but yeah, I mean, it's the same idea. That definitely helps. But and it also helps that in this cycle, the highest office on the ballot is the state Senate. So if we had a presidential primary or a Senate primary, like US Senate primary or a governor primary, you really can't run a full slate because people know who is running for governor, who's running for Senate, who's running for president. But if you're only looking at the state Senate as the highest office, and especially if you don't have an incumbent, I think it is easier to get voters to think that the opposition is endorsed, or they don't necessarily know who the official line is, so they might vote for you. I'm watching that race very carefully in the 3rd and 4th district.
I'm watching that too. I'm in contact with Mario too.
So, but think about what we're saying. So you've got a system where the political parties can deceive voters, and to have a chance to win against them, you have to be equally deceptive, right?
Okay.
That's not how democracy is supposed to work. We don't need to have two sides distorting the ballot. We need a fair ballot so that voters don't get tricked by one side or the other. But yeah, that's a really great point. That is a really interesting set of races.
It definitely is. I think there was Tomas had a question next. Is he still
there
here?
was
Did he
another.
have to drop off?
It looks like maybe he dropped off.
Yeah, I think we lost him. Hopefully he comes back and we'll be able to answer his question after. There is another question in the chat, I believe.
Is the layout driven where I'm not sure I understand the question. Kathleen, can you ask it verbally? I'm not sure I understand.
Yes, hi.
Hi.
It was one of the last things you spoke about, the line ballot and then the office block ballot. It's whether or not a machine is used, does that affect it? No, okay.
No, it was, so up until 2020, there was a handful of counties that had a different structure ballot for their paper ballots than for their machine ballots. Because very few people were voting paper ballots up until the pandemic, right? After 2020, all of those counties, except for Hunterdon, made their paper ballot look just like their machine ballot, and it's county line. It's just the bad ballot, basically.
Okay.
So it no longer really makes much of a difference. Up until 2020, there was a few counties that had different ones, but not many people were voting on paper, so it didn't really have a huge impact.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, it's a good question. Josephine, did you have a question?
Hold on real quick. We had Tomas managed to
Tomas
jump
is
back
back.
on.
Hi,
Yeah,
Tomas.
I think he had a question from earlier. Did you want to ask your question?
Yeah, you can let Josephine go because I know I lost the signal. I can go after her.
Okay,
Josephine?
Right. Well, I guess I'm feeling like a lot of what I'm hearing today is very similar to what I heard the last time I came to one of these meetings. The way I understand things around the design of the ballots, it's my understanding that the way to get these things to change is to work one-on-one with people who are designing the ballots in the county. And it's my understanding that very often these individuals—
We're running out of time before we have to move to our next speaker. So if you could please wrap up the question.
I'm going to stop.
So it really has to do with the way our laws are set up around ballot design. The county clerks have some discretion in how they design the ballot, but the reason the ballot looks like this is not just because the clerks choose to structure it this way. It's because the underlying legislation and lawsuits over the years have enabled this. So it would be nice if you could just work with the clerk to make a better ballot, but unfortunately that's not the case. that wouldn't solve it. And if I can just quickly address, there's a question about what's the best way to change this. There are multiple efforts underway. One is just to raise awareness, like through sessions like this, so that more voters understand what's going on. There is a lawsuit, which Joe is part of, and I'm sure he'll speak to that, to challenge this structure. And that could be very dramatic if that prevailed, if they're able to win that lawsuit. I don't think the legislature would ever change the system on their own. They would
Agreed.
have no incentive to do so.
If the legislature tried to change it, and if they didn't have enough legislators buy in, all of the ones who tried to change it would be gone by the next election because they would all lose the line. The system's built in order to protect this from happening, but there are ways to change it. And we're going to hear about one of them from our next speaker. As Julia mentioned, I'm one of 6 candidate plaintiffs on a lawsuit along with New Jersey Working Families as the organizational plaintiff, suing to say that the current ballot structure violates candidates' First Amendment rights. And we're very optimistic about how that's going to turn out. But if you know anything about the legal process at all for anything, you know it takes forever. So it's very important to note that there are lots of things we can do in the interim to help make sure that if and when we do win that case, we can implement better ballot systems and positive changes. And that leads really well into our next speaker. So if you have any additional questions, please put them in the chat. We'll revisit any additional questions at the end of the meeting. We have a section at the end for general Q&A. So thank you, Julia. Really appreciate your time. And with that, Madina.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Very informative topic. Again, I just want to reiterate that CAIR-New Jersey is America's largest civil rights, Muslim civil rights, civil liberties, and advocacy organization. And we are a 501c3 nonpartisan organization. We are not endorsing any candidates or any political party. This is simply voter education activity to inform the public to make their best decisions based off their own agenda. And with that, I want to now introduce our next speaker, who will discuss what is County Party Committee, how do you run, and why is it important? Miss Laura Zurfluh, who is a part of the Cranberry County Democratic Committee.
Thank you very much, Madina. Thank you, Julia. I'm going to share my presentation and start. There we go. Okay, so what is county committee and how do I run? And then we'll get also to talking about what county committee can do in order to change the line. So county committee, I call it the most powerful position. Oh, I'll just introduce myself. I am on county committee in Cranberry. I'm reaching it'll be my 7th year, I think, this year. But I'm not a learned professor like Julia. I'm actually just a veterinarian who does politics in my spare time. So county committee is the most powerful position nobody's ever heard of. It includes the power to change bylaws to become more small d democratic, as well as the power to end the line. If we get enough people on county committees that believe in a truly democratic process, we can end that line that we were talking about. And it also allows you to endorse candidates that will advance causes that you believe in. So I was elected off the line in 2017 to county committee. I was re-elected off the line in 2019. I'll just mention that we talked about how powerful the line is. When you're running for a smaller position like county, it becomes more easy to gain advantage over the county line, just because I literally have about 1,000 people in my district, so I can go door to door and speak with all my constituents, which makes it a lot easier to run off the line if you've gone to their door and spoken to them and told them where they can find you on the ballot. It is surmountable. Whereas when you're talking about larger positions, even assembly, it becomes much more insurmountable. And since my election, our committee has changed drastically. We have all new members, bylaws, and policies. What is the county committee? It's a governing structure structure internal to a specific party. The only parties that have county committees, and these are by law, are the Republican or Democratic committees, and each municipality Most municipalities have both a Democratic and Republican committee. And when you're elected to county committee, you're actually elected to two different committees. You're elected to your municipal committee, and you'll be doing different work on that committee from your county Democratic or Republican committee. So I'm in Cranberry. I go to my municipal meeting very frequently, but I only go to my county meeting once or twice a year. And that's where you can make the difference in changing the line. Although municipally, actually you can too, Joe, because we have Rebecca Shear on, who's actually, they've gotten rid of the line in their municipality. And a committee member's role on either the county or the municipal committee will differ. And when you're going to your county convention, you're going to be casting a vote to endorse primary candidates at that convention. I'll just mention that not every county actually has a convention, which is even worse. But in Middlesex County, we do have a convention. We go to it and we elect. We vote in a private vote. We get to vote who we endorse. You're either endorsing, you could be endorsing Biden, you could be endorsing Booker, you could be endorsing Christie, the higher ups, as well as the less long positions like county commissioner. On the municipal committee, you will also be recruiting, encouraging, educating, and promoting your Democratic or Republican candidates for township government. I feel like this is a place that can make a big difference because I can find candidates that I really believe in who want to govern the way I would like to see them govern, and I can get them elected in my municipality. And these are actually guided by law, and that law is called Title 19. And that is accepted by both the Republican and the Democratic committees as their part of their bylaws. You can find the New Jersey Democratic or Republican bylaws either here or here, depending on which party you're with. So they are publicly available. You can also Google your county and the county committee bylaws to find your county bylaws. And that's actually required to be posted if the county committee has a website. And you can also, once you become a municipal committee member, you can request the municipal county committee bylaws. And I actually did that when I became a municipal committee member. And that's when we found out we didn't even have bylaws. And so we spent quite a few years writing bylaws. So what does a Republican or Democratic committee look like? There are 2 members from each voting district in my municipality. In some committees, in some counties, I'm sorry, it used to have to be a man and a woman, and some counties that is no longer true. And it's probably could be challenged in every county now that it's been challenged in some and successfully. And each voting district, you guys, when you go to vote, you're in District 1 or Ward 2 or whatever. Those are the small areas that we're talking about. So in my small town of 4,000, we have 3 voting districts. So, and you can actually find your voting district if you go to that website. You have to live in the district that you run to represent. So I'm in District 1. I live in District 1, and that's where I represent in Cranberry. If you do choose to run for county committee, the requirements are that pretty simple. You must be 18 years old and a registered member of the party that you wish to represent and a resident in the district that you wish to represent. Responsibilities can include things like attending local, county, and state meetings. Importantly, also recruiting, interviewing, and choosing candidates who you believe will best represent your party. And then once you choose a candidate, you would be supporting it by canvassing with them, phoning voters, organizing meet and greets, speaking to your friends, posting on social media, doing anything you can to support that candidate to win. So we're going to bypass some of this because if you want to find out how to run, the first thing to find out if your seats in your county are up for election this year. So this year, and this may be a little outdated, Joe, but in 2023 with Camden, Middlesex, Sussex, Union, and Warren. Is there any others that you know of? I feel like
there's one more. There are 6. Cumberland.
Cumberland. And our revolution will help you determine if the seats in your district are open. Now, we're beyond the place where you can actually be put on the line because the primary is coming up on June 6th, June 5th. So you would be running as a write-in candidate, but that's actually very easy to do. So you don't need to file a nominating petition. This is something you would do if you're running in one of the districts that is going to be running next year. You would file a nominating petition. And then running as a write-in, you're going to do the same thing. You're going to run a campaign, canvassing and contacting voters, asking them to vote for you. These, you know, a lot of these people are going to be your friends because they're your neighbors, and you can ask your friends to ask their friends. As long as they're in the district that you live in, they will be able to write you in. And the number of write-in votes that you're going to need is very, very small to win. It's generally somewhere around 6. So it's a very small number. If you plan on doing a write-in campaign, it's very, very doable. And again, our revolution will help you to do that. And then I'll just mention that with the advent of vote by mail, which has become a lot more popular in the past several years, our deadline has changed. We used to canvass, kind of hoping to finish by election day, but we want to canvass now for our vote by mail voters 6 weeks prior to election day, and we're already a little bit past that. A lot of people have already mailed in their ballots. So when people who vote by mail get their ballots, we see a big chunk of those people send in that ballot the first week they get it. And then we see another chunk of those people send in the ballot right before election day. So the last week before election day. So if you do choose to run as a write-in, you want to contact your friends as soon as possible, because once they've sent their ballot in, they can no longer write you in. And then again, 1 week before election day, one thing I am a vote by mail voter, so I get my ballot 6 weeks ahead of time, and I can take it with me. I can copy it and take it with me and show people where I'm going to be if I'm running, if I'm on that ballot. Again, if you're running as a write-in, you don't even need to show them. You just need to show them the ballot and show them you're going to be in the very last line, because as we talked about earlier, the most important person goes first. This year, that'll be your state senator, then it's your state assembly people, then your county commissioners, then your municipal leaders, and then at the very bottom is going to be the county committee leaders. And I'll mention here that we are elected in the primary. We don't go to a general election because we're a partisan position. We don't get elected in general elections. So our election starts and ends on the primary date. And you're going to be at the very bottom, and that's where someone would write you in, is that very bottom where it says members of county committee. Once you become a county committee person, you have certain rights. You're going to be taking on certain responsibilities, and I'll mention here that those responsibilities vary a lot depending on how much you want to put into the position. There's no required meetings in terms of, no one's going to kick you off if you don't go to any meetings. So you could, and many people do, there are committee people and they never go to meetings, they never vote, they never do anything. If you're going to run, I would, I hope you'd be running because you care, and I hope you'd be showing up for those meetings. But the position can vary from being, an hour to a week to being nothing. But it's not a tremendously time intensive position. And it's definitely seasonal. So right before election day, obviously, things get a lot busier, in September, October. And you're also going to be guaranteed certain rights when you join the county committee. Sorry, and I didn't even put on that slide what those rights are. Those are things like you are permitted to look at the bylaws, you're permitted to make changes, ask for changes to the bylaws, you're permitted to look at the budget and to see where the money is spent, things like that. I think that's about it. I do talk very fast because I'm from New York City, and so I apologize for that. But if anyone has questions, I am ready to hear them.
It's a Jersey thing too, Laura. I talk pretty fast. Thank you, Laura. I do want to just very briefly mention, as Laura said, the responsibility varies widely, but the baseline to make it worth running is 2 meetings a year. There's something called the municipal convention, and a county convention. That's where you vote to endorse candidates, like Laura talked about. And then in that first year, you do what's called a reorg meeting to elect your chair for municipal and county. And that's, if you're doing that, it's worth running for. If you, everything after that is an opportunity, it's gravy, it's great, but it is minimal commitment. So does anybody have any questions for Laura?
What is your email?
My email? Zurlin, Z as in
Put it in
zebra.
chat. Let's put it in
I'll
chat.
put it in the chat. Sorry. I'll go ahead and put it in the chat.
And we're gonna go to Thomas next, because we know Thomas has been patiently waiting. Thank you, Thomas.
Oh, thank you. And I apologize. My internet's been trashed today, so I've been in and out. But I guess I have a question. I think this may be more specific to Julia that spoke earlier. I guess one of the things that I think I've been wrestling with, and I wonder if others as well, in terms of African Americans, is that what becomes the potential unintended consequences when we think about a system being changed? I know for African Americans, our relationship with democracy has always been a bit touchy because we weren't envisioned in that democracy. And so when we think about African Americans now, I think your slide particular that showed the relative kind of consistency between African American population and African American representation, and recognize that. I guess the question is, how should African Americans think about this issue when they can maybe can potentially be protective of status because there's that fear of the unknown. So I guess how should one think about this issue, recognizing that many are locked out of the process, and that includes a lot of African Americans, but also recognize that our representation is currently, I guess if I was to assume your data, is kind of okay because it's consistent with the population.
I think that's such a smart and insightful question. So, I mean, I don't want to tell anybody how they should feel about this. I think one point I would make is that legislators don't actually have much power. So I think representation is representation is very important. Having people of color actually in the legislature is obviously very important. But part of what our system does is it shifts the power from the elected officials to the party bosses. And those are still overwhelmingly white, non-Hispanic white men. And because the elected officials can be swapped out without any real impact, they're not being elected in their own right. There are exceptions to this, like Ron Rice, who unfortunately passed away recently, was someone who ran off the line and won many years ago, but still did. Nia Gill ran off the line and won, but it's much harder to do that now. And those are the exceptions. And so what you see in places like Hudson and Camden is that legislators are swapped in and out as the party bosses decide. They don't personally have the ability to control what happens. And if they don't do as they're told, they're just removed and replaced with someone else because the ballot decides who wins. So their personal reputation, their name recognition is not that important. I'll give you an example. In Hudson County, you had Nicholas Cervelati just a few years ago, who was in the leadership when he lost the county line. It was irrelevant, right? Whoever was put in place on the ballot won next. So it's not, yes, it's important to have people of color in the legislature, but it's important to have them as real elected officials with power, not as a figurehead that's put in there by a party boss who's behind the scenes pulling the strings, who is not a person of color for the most part.
Completely agree, Julia. I don't want to highlight one thing specifically that's happening right now. I don't remember the legislative district, but I believe Becky Shear, who's on this call, lives in that legislative district where we saw in redistricting, the powers that be in the New Jersey Democratic Party intentionally combined 2 districts, one of which had a Black woman in the state Senate. And they then
That's Nia
endorsed
Gill. That's the person I was mentioning.
Against the Black woman, exactly, Nia Gill, who you mentioned. So that's why Dick Cody got the endorsement over her. And we see these type of things often. You want to look at the Camden mayoral election. I think it was 2019, 2021. I don't remember what, but there was a whole massive scandal because the party machine there pushed out the current mayor at the time that had community support and imposed the person that they wanted instead, Vic Sarson. And we see this all the time. They use this as a mechanism to control who from the communities of color gets to go to those positions. And that, to your point, Julia, it means that the people going into those positions, going to the legislatures, are not the ones with power. They're not the ones in charge. They are forced to listen to the overwhelmingly white, overwhelmingly male party chairs, and that's not okay.
Thank you.
Anyway, that's a fantastic question. Thank you.
I also have a question myself.
Yeah, sure. I'm sorry. I'm going to ask you to hold that question until after our next section because we have a limited amount of time before they have to go. They have a hard stop at 8 o'clock, so I want to make sure we give them a chance to speak, and I'm going to move straight into that. Becky, I noticed you have your hand up as well. We'll get to you after this. But we have folks who have run and won for county committee, who are, to the point that we were just discussing, they are people of color and can share some interesting experiences from when they ran, what they've been able to do since they've been on party county committee, and kind of give us demystify this position that nobody really knows about but has all this power a little bit. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Brady Rivera, who is the chair of our Revolution Trenton Mercer, and he's also on Democratic County Committee in Hamilton Township. It's in Mercer County, it's my county. And I'm going to introduce Larry Holman, who is on County Committee in Trenton, in the West Ward of Trenton in the 17th District. I believe, Brady, you're in District 18 in Hamilton, right? If you want to go ahead and anything I missed, feel free to introduce yourself and just share a little bit about what it was like to run and what you've been able to do since you're in the position to kind of raise your voice and make sure your community's been heard.
Yeah, absolutely. So as Joe said, my name is Brady Rivera. I'm the chair of our Revolution Trenton Mercer. But at the time when I was running for county committee, I was elections chair, so I was kind of responsible for overseeing a lot of the county committee elections that we had going on throughout Mercer County. And in my district specifically, I was running for Hamilton 18. A very small district. So the thing about these districts is that they're actually very small. They're like a few blocks. You can actually knock out a lot of these voters within a month. If you decide to dedicate maybe an hour, 2 hours a week, knocking on doors, letting people know who you are, what you're running for. A lot of the big things about a very impactful thing about running for county committee is that a lot of these voters have actually never met a candidate before, in their lives. I have knocked on a few doors where they said this is the first time any candidate has ever come up to me and just asked me for their vote, and that alone has them come out and support for you. But I think the most intimate thing about running for county committee in these very small districts is that you are not removed from these voters. They're your neighbors, they're your friends, they're your family. Something about running for state senate, state assembly, U.S. Senate, Congress, is that you are now this huge person running to represent 100 and some thousand people. But when you're running for county committee, you're running to represent maybe 1,000 people, maybe less than 1,000 people in your district. And in my case, I'm of my neighborhood. I represent, the demographics of my neighborhood. I took a look at this one website that I like to reference here and there that was used for redistricting, called Dave's Redistricting. And I'll put that link in the chat in a little bit. But you can see kind of the demographic breakdown, gender and ethnicity. And I found out that my district was a good 52% Hispanic. I myself am Guatemalan, so of course I'm Hispanic as well. But before I decided to run for county committee, it was two white folk. So they did not really represent what the district looks like, especially in age as well. I don't want to come off sounding ageist or anything, but they were both. Well, I know one woman the one woman was at least 70-something years old. The other guy, we knew nothing about him. Not even the county party knew who he was. He was a placeholder. So I pretty easily ran and won against him. I got his seat because he effectively ran no campaign. He came out with the least votes, but he still came out with votes. even though nobody knows who he is, he never knocked on doors, he was just a name on the ballot. And that's the thing about running for county committee. You know, nobody knows who they're running for or voting for. They're just many times they just turn out to be just placeholders for the party, just for like an easy vote. But you know, when you come out for county committee, you are very easily right there. You know what the people want. You know what they're representing. You know what you're representing for them. And when it came to my district specifically, like I said, it's largely Hispanic. A lot of them speak Spanish. Some of them limited to no English. So I got to run my campaign bilingual. And I think that's one of the most important things when you want to represent, you know, such a small district and make it intimate. You also want to give them proper election and voter information and political information in a language that they can understand. And I think to me, that was something extremely important, which is why I ran my campaign. And I came out on top with the most votes out of 4 people. Of course, 4 people, 2 seats.
Thank you, Brady. And congrats on your win. I know it's been about a year, but congrats nonetheless. And on that note of, you know, wanting to reflect the community you come from, be able to speak up for your community. Larry, I want to go over to you. Can you tell us a little bit about, you know, your experience running in Trenton and then what you've been able to do since you've been in the seat?
Yeah, so I'm probably gonna take a little, like, you know, I'll be brief because we got, you know, time. Hi, everybody. I hope everybody's doing well. So for my particular seat, I didn't have to run off the line like Brady and Joe. My seat was vacant, and so there was a guy who's actually a Republican, who was in my seat on the Democratic side, which is very interesting. And so I got a call from Joe in last year in like March, and he asked me to run, and I was apprehensive about running, and he explained to me why we need to run and why it's important to be on these on these committees in Mercer, and like how they literally make the decision for the folks, and their primaries don't matter. Like you can look at the primary ballots, like Julia spoke about it earlier, and you notice that like these elections are not contested. Like there's usually just one person on the ballot, and like that's weird in New Jersey because New Jerseyans are very competitive. So just to have one person running, we know that something's afoot, and what's afoot is the process is undemocratic. The ballots are undemocratic. And so like in a place like Trenton, there was many vacancies and all over Mercer for real. But in Trenton particularly, I had a problem with the vacancies. And so what Joe and Brady determined on the election committee is that we can get progressive folks on the committee if we just fill the vacancies. And so I actually got to run on the line. The county chair, she likes to remind me that she put me on the county line, which is very funny. She told me one time when at a work thing, but all it took was for me to get a signature from my mother who lives in the district and a signature from my sister who lives in the district, and then I grew up in the district. Like I used to deliver papers in the district, and they know me, and so like it was kind of easy to get votes because they knew who I was. So if I was running off the line, maybe I could have won. But you know, it's also important to get on these committees because we can do away with as a committee, we get enough votes, we can do away with the current ballot structure and the way we vote. Which is extremely hard. I think we have like about 100 progressives on the 400 person committee. So like it's going to be a long time before we do that. But because I've been on the committee, Brady and Joe, like we've learned so much. We learned so much about the process. We've learned so much about like we went from being like an adversarial, annoying, like poking the bear to like somebody who the bear kind of listens to. What I mean by bear is like the party bosses. And so like they listen to us. And so it's really, I think we've done a really good job in Mercer County. And we are an example for the rest of the state. And so I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Larry. And no, I'm happy to hear you talk about that because I'm kind of generally proud of our chapter as a whole because we managed to carve out this space. We managed to be able to have a say in some legislative elections. We've managed to have a say in our county executive race recently. We endorsed the winner in that race. So very happy that we've been able to build this presence, and it's come through building a multiracial, gender diverse, overall diverse group of people from all around Mercer County. And yeah, we have certain areas that we tend to be a little more focused in because that's you got more people in those areas. There's a lot of people in Hamilton, Trent. But I'm very proud of Larry and Brady and the other folks who ran as part of that campaign. We are short on time. I think, okay, you guys have a little time for questions. Great. I think we can take some questions. I am going to just mention, Brady, I remember a story you told me about how you got one of our town council people to go canvass with you because the conditions of the roads near your house were so bad. I don't know if there's been any update on that, but I am curious because that's kind of what committee can do for people, is they know you're a person all of a sudden because you have a real vote that they need. They have to listen to you. They have to at least give you lip service. So anyway, questions. I see Becky has her hand up.
Hi, yeah, thanks, Joe. And thanks so much to everyone who put this together. And thanks, Julia, for your presentation. Julia made a similar presentation to the Maplewood Democrats, which was instrumental in helping us to make an important ballot reform in our local races. But my question is for Julia. Before you mentioned something about Ron Rice winning off the line, but then you said that more recently that's become more difficult to do, running off the line. And I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit on that. Thanks.
You mean, why has it gotten harder to win off the line?
Yes, thanks.
I haven't really looked at it in any kind of systematic way. I suspect that the machines have just gotten better at doing what they do. Ron Rice had a lot of name recognition. Nia Gill had name recognition. She was also the incumbent in that race. She was running against actually the current Democratic State Party chair and Essex Party chair, Leroy. So I think there were some specific circumstances in those two races. But even if you go back further than 12 years, I mean, it's been 12 years that no incumbent on the line has lost. But even if you go back further, it's only a handful of people, like 2-3 people that have managed to win off the line going way back. So it's not like it was easy and then it suddenly got hard. It's always been difficult.
Thanks so much. Thanks.
It's a great question, Rebecca.
Thank you so much. This is extremely refreshing. I have a question myself. How do we get younger people more involved in this conversation? Oftentimes, we see our regular run-of-the-mill political wonks, our policy people, our governmental people in these spaces, in these conversations, advocates, activists, but oftentimes the youth are not informed and don't understand this process. So how do we allow for them to better engage so they can make better decisions, whatever those decisions look like for them?
So I'm somewhere around the area of youth. I'm 31. I don't know if you consider that youth still or not, but I do know that Larry and Brady are both younger than myself. So if either of you have a thought on this, I will defer.
Yeah, so I do. So I worked on the Biden campaign via the Workers' Families Party in 2020. And one of the tools that we use, because like during that time, the pandemic was raging. And so we could only call folks. We can call folks, we can text them, everything digital. And so one of the things they taught us during our training was to agitate folks and not make people upset, right? But like a question like, do you think it's fair that Jeff Bezos made $70 billion during the pandemic, but didn't pay his workers hazard pay, right? And so most people are going to be like, no, I do not think that's fair, right? And so just get the conversation. And so like, I am a political wonk. I've always been since Barack Obama said he was running. And so like I've been involved. And so like it's kind of hard for me to answer this question, but at the same time, I know that like single issue based bring people into the fold. And so like I wasn't always progressive, and I became progressive when Bernie Sanders in 2016 said on stage in the Democratic debate that Black Lives Matter, right? And so like that like had my antennas go up. Like, okay, like this person says Black Lives Matter when it's not an opportune time to say Black Lives Matter on stage. Like, yeah, it was an opportune time in 2020 to say it, but in 2016 it was not. And so it was like he's taking his position, right? An issue that I care about. And so then I started listening. It's like, okay, break up the banks. And then like it made sense why we should break up the banks. And so I think like issue-based campaigns like getting down to like what people care about, and like, agitating and you don't want to use fear, but like, agitating and just having a conversation with folks is really important. That's how you bring them into the fold. I think like if all of us are political wonks on this call, like we can call back to a time when we weren't highly political and something turned us political and made us, if you're radical, you're radical. It made you radical, it made you revolutionary. And so like we have to remember like when we weren't a part of this, like when we didn't care or weren't privy to what was going on, we have to think about how can we bring other folks into the fold.
Thank you
Thank
so
you for
much.
that answer, Larry. I just want to add, a lot of this stuff has steered into stuff that's a little more political or partisan. That's by nature. Larry's a member of our revolution. Brady's a member of our revolution as am I. That's kind of representative of our group. It's not representative of the other groups here. So I just want to make sure to carve that out and highlight that. Anyway, Madina, I think you were going to chime in.
I wanted just to give folks another opportunity to ask any more questions that they have, but if not, we are able to answer questions offline. I do want to allow Joe to talk about ways in which folks can get involved, regardless of where you stand. So I want to pass it to Joe before we close out.
Yes, give me just a sec. I'm getting that set up. Why is this not cooperating? Okay, I'm sorry, I'm having some technical difficulties.
No problem, take your time.
Okay. There it is. Thank you for your patience. Okay, can everybody see that? So just really briefly, if you'd like to get involved with us in our efforts towards the Better Ballots campaign, here's a couple of links you can do that with. I also want to highlight we've been putting a one-stop shop link up in chat throughout this whole presentation. That's got a lot of information on CAIR-New Jersey, on our Revolution New Jersey, on the Good Government's Coalition of New Jersey, Better Ballots campaign, ways to get involved, contact info. There's a whole bunch of stuff on there. Go check it out. There's bios if you want to know a little bit more about the speakers and moderators from this. But if you want to get involved with us in general, that first link at the top, that's where you go to. But if you want to get involved with specifically towards the Better Ballots campaign, that's towards the bottom. Now, I want to highlight one particular call to action that organizations and if you know elected officials, you convince they can also sign on. There is the Better Ballots New Jersey resolution to support switching to a better ballot. Here's a short list of a number of different organizations that have signed on. This is a little outdated, but there are over 70 organizations that have signed on. I'd encourage you to do so. We've got a easy to remember bit.ly link here. It's just bit.ly/Better Ballots New Jersey. Go check that out. And if you do look into running for county committee and decide that's something you want to explore, we have contacts around the state with our own network, with other networks, other groups to kind of get the temperature on the ground wherever you're looking into. And that is a very crucial first step, because if you don't know the conditions in your town, you don't know who's in charge, if they'd like you to reach out, if they don't want new people involved, you don't know how to approach getting involved. You don't know where the vacant seats are. You don't know if you should just go talk to the chair and they'll just appoint you, because they can do that if they're so inclined. So the first step here to getting involved is just reach out to us, fill out the get involved form, contact us via email. It's on that one-stop shop. There are some emails for us as well. And then if you do decide you're going to run, we have campaign literature that we can put together for people. We've got a flyer template for county committee candidates. We've got district maps, so we can tell you exactly where your district is, where it starts, where it ends, who's in it. Speaking of who's in it, we've got voter lists and walk lists that we can get you, so you can go knock doors for just the party that you are running in and the people who are active voters. We've got other lists of people who are inclined to support you. We can tell you if there are incumbent members in your district or not, and then we'll do trainings. We've posted online trainings, we've done in-person trainings. I've gone and canvassed, and someone who's looking to run has shadowed me. We'll tell you the campaign timeline, so you know exactly what you need to be doing when. We've done this quite a bit at this point, so we know how to get people up to speed to know how to do this. And I know this seems like a lot of help. This is not necessary for everybody. This is if you're running off the line general. That's when you need a lot of help. If you are running in a vacant district, whether it's a write-in or you're just filling out a form, you either need to fill out your form and get like 2 to 5 signatures, or you need 2 to 5 write-in votes. That's very easy. And we can use just a small part of this broader toolbox to make sure you get those votes. I want to show you an example of a candidate flyer right here. This is someone who did a write-in campaign in Mercer County last year. And you can see we show very, very clearly, this is what we want people to do. You look at the ballot. This is how you write their name in. That you want to make these things idiot-proof, because these ballots are arcane and confusing and hard to understand. So to just tell people to write someone in, they don't know where to put their name. They don't know what office exactly. They don't know what column to put that in. So we have to show them. And that's what we do with this. We give them reasons for why you should vote for this person. We make this person human, right? We have a little bio that they wrote for us. You know what he does, you know what he's about, you know reasons why you should vote for him. And then we highlight the big issue that ties all of our candidates together, the ballot line, which I'm not going to go into it anymore. We've already been talking about it ad nauseum. But we've put together a graphic that allows folks to very quickly and succinctly speak to what is a very complex issue and show a visual. And that is incredibly valuable when we're talking about ballot. So I'm just going to wrap up with that same slide towards the start, but this is how we can help. And if you are interested in learning more about your local community and how you can try to get involved on county committee, please reach out. We're happy to help. We're happy to try to put more folks who are people first, who are community oriented, into these positions that can take your voice and make sure that your elected officials have to listen.
Perfect. Thank you
Right,
so much, Joe.
I saw, were there any questions, or I think we're done doing general Q&A and then we wrap?
Yep.
I do have a question.
Yes.
Was curious, how are you guys wrestling with some of the other democracy types of bills that have been proposed? I know particularly ranked choice voting is one that I don't know if it's gaining traction, but I guess obviously we know in politics there's always this compromise. So do you all see ranked choice as like, we can tolerate it, even though we know we have the lawsuit and that's kind of our bread and butter? Or, is the lawsuit the real, like, this is the real way to kind of make democracy as open and fair as possible?
Good question. Glad to be able to talk about this. We fully support ranked choice voting. There's no reason we can't do both. The question that I often have to deal with regards to this, other than what you just mentioned, is, well, if we do ranked choice, we don't need the ballot line we don't need to get rid of the ballot line. And that is wrong, for the very simple reason that just because you do ranked choice voting doesn't mean you change the ballot format. You can have a line ballot format with ranked choice voting. You can have no ranked choice voting and get rid of the line. They are two issues that are both incredibly relevant and incredibly important, and help build power for people, like regular everyday people, to be able to actually have a say in our politics for a change, to make sure everybody gets a real vote and not just these insiders. And that people's votes aren't thrown out, whether it's because of a bad ballot design or because they backed a candidate who was a spoiler, and then the candidate they would have preferred between the other two loses, right? So yeah, we support both of those, and that's the gist of it.
I want to clarify, when Joe says we, he's speaking on behalf of our revolution. CAIR-New Jersey has not taken an official position on the matter. We do work very closely with a lot of different civic engagement organizations, being League of Women Voters of New Jersey, the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice, NAACP, and a whole host. And we will revisit our position on that matter, and we will be in touch offline. But thank you. You've been asking really great questions, so I appreciate you bringing that into the conversation.
And thank you for clarifying that, Madina. I apologize for potentially making it seem like I was speaking on behalf.
No, you're fine. With recordings, you always have to be
Yes.
clarify, because folks can jump in at any time and might not understand or see what's going on. Do we have any other questions? We are hitting time soon, and I want to be respectful of folks' time before we close out. Going once. Going
Was there
twice.
anything in the chat?
Yes.
I don't think I saw anything in the chat. I think we're good.
All righty. This has been a phenomenally enriching and fruitful conversation. Thank you so much again to our co-host, Our Revolution New Jersey, the Good Government Coalition of New Jersey, Better Ballots New Jersey, as well as our, co-sponsors, the New Jersey Black Empowerment Coalition, the Muslim League of Voters of New Jersey, the New Jersey Alliance for Immigrant Justice, American Muslims for Palestine, I'm going to make sure that I'm not forgetting any names in addition, oh no, I got them all. Good. I do want to reiterate, and you probably saw me posting this throughout the chat. CAIR-New Jersey is a New Jersey chapter of America's largest Muslim civil rights, civil liberties, and advocacy organization. We are a nonpartisan organization, which means we can encourage community members to participate in state and local elections, conduct voter registration and get out the vote drives, provide training programs, issue briefings, organize candidate forums, volunteer campaigns, and lead get out the vote drives. However, we make no claims to the favorability of one political party over another or one political candidate over another. We are just committed to making sure that our community voices are heard and that folks are equipped with the necessary knowledge and information to make well-informed decisions wherever they might stand on the political spectrum. So again, I want to thank all our participants for being a part of this really refreshing conversation, very necessary conversation. Please be sure to make sure that you participate in the upcoming June primary election. That's going to be on June 6th. If you are eligible to vote, I want to pass it over to Joe before we give it a close.
Yep, thank you, Madina. I have one last thing. I want to throw up the one-stop shop link on the screen in case somebody's watching a recording or you guys haven't gotten it out of the chat already. I'll share my screen real quick. Oh, hold on. Never mind. That's a false start. I didn't change the link. This will be real quick. Apologize.
No problem. Perfectly fine. Thank you again to our presenters, Dr. Julia Rubin Sass-Rubin, as well as Laura Zurfluh, as well as our personal testimonies, Lawrence, as well as Barry. We really appreciate you all taking the time to be here, and we hope that this continues more relevant conversations on this matter as we continue to approach the general and primary elections. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a great night. Bye-bye.
I got the link fixed. So right here. All right. Son of a. Sorry. It's not that one. It's. Oh, that's the right presentation on the wrong slide. Why is this not cooperating? There it is. And
thank you so much.
There you go. Thank you for bearing with me. I apologize for the inconvenience.
No problem.
And
Thank
yes,
you.
so just go to that link, the one-stop shop, got all your info to learn more about us, about CAIR New Jersey, Good Government Coalition, Better Ballots Campaign. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great night. Bye-bye.